Want to bring you more on the California wildfires now. 130,000 people have been ordered to leave their homes. At least 5 have lost their lives. That's as fires rage across parts of Los Angeles. Well, we're joined now by Patricia Cosentino, a resident of Palisades, where the first fire broke out, who's now moved away from that area. Pleased to see that you've been able to move to safety. Really appreciate you sharing your time. How are you doing?
I slept last night for a block of about 5 hours, and it was really amazing because I forgot. You forget when you in the night. But I woke up this morning. I don't. I'm one of the lucky ones that has the ability to imagine that my house is still standing because I haven't seen that it's burnt down. But it's a horrible purgatory to be in to not know. So I feel really horrible, to be honest.
What do you leave behind when you evacuated? What was the situation on the ground at that moment?
Oh, you just actually, that pan was just my neighborhood. That's my neighborhood in the Highlands. I left everything. I'm in my robe because I don't have anything else to wear. I didn't think we would, I, I just assumed we'd be back by the same night, maybe the next day. So I left everything. I left everything. My son left everything. We only have a couple bags that of stupid stuff, stuff like my meditation pillow, like something that was sitting at the door that you just grab, silly things.
What
So
was it like trying to evacuate? Because we saw those scenes of gridlock, of the fire department even using bulldozers to move cars aside that had been abandoned. What was it like for you?
well, actually, that was us. I made a first attempt to drive down that canyon drive before the official escort started, and I had my son with me. I had picked up a hitchhiker on the road, which was crazy. He was walking through this canyon by himself, and I we had wet towels over our faces, and the canyon, the because of the fire that was on all sides, actually the boulders had started coming down. So there was smoke in front of us, and I realized that we might not make it through the canyon, and I couldn't, the cars were slowing down. So I turned around and went back up where the sky was actually blue. um, and I realize now the cars were stopping because there were cars blocking the road. So I'm really glad that we didn't actually persevere. Um, we attempted about an hour later. It got to that point where we realized we may not be able to leave. And I felt really stuck. I had seen what we were going to drive through, and I also could see the fire coming over the ridge. Um, so it was a very panicked, and it wasn't me. You have your child with you, so the decision that you're going to make, you have to be accountable. My ex-husband doesn't live in my neighborhood, and I'm going to have to say to him that the choices that I'm making, um, I'm going to have to be accountable. So it was a really horrible position to be in. But we did it, and we got out, and we went with a caravan with our immediate neighbors, and all maybe 5 families left at the same time.
Processing this situation as an adult is hard enough. How is your child?
Well, my son is 18, so he's in this, that strange place where you kind of expect them to be an adult. But, he covered his head the whole time. He didn't look. Some of my footage was on the air yesterday, and I'm telling him, keep your eyes shut, because I didn't want him to see, because you can't unsee. I keep replaying in my head what I saw. So, he doesn't want to go back. He can't believe, he said, if the house is still standing, you're going to go back. Because in his mind, like, let's go. This is a bad place to be. So, he's traumatized. They're all traumatized. One of his best friends lost his house. He was staying with my son yesterday. They all lost. I don't have a single friend that has a home. that compounded immeasurable loss is suffocating, because you feel so much sadness for every person that you love. You are, you want to hold them, and at the same time, you want to be held. It's a really horrible place to be in.
And watching footage as a viewer, as somebody reporting on the scene, you are so many steps removed from the reality, the smell, the sounds, the heat. What was it like? What was that environment like to try and leave from?
Um, uh, well, the actual visual was, both sides of the canyon were either in flames or had been burned. That smoldering, like, smoke that you see is sort of after it's gone through. So there's this combination of smoke. There's the smoke of, like, the ash, and then you see, like, the actual flame smoke. Um, it wasn't until we got down that there were places where you actually could feel, like, you felt, you, I felt like you could feel the heat. Um, uh, when you watch a movie, like, my son told me that it felt like War of the Worlds. Where everything is like twisted and not like you remember it, but there's like remnants of what you think you remember. Um, it's like I guess that's what it's like. And leaving the Palisades, there's this turn from Sunset to PCH, and it's this most beautiful place. We're lucky to live in this most beautiful place. I go to the beach 4 or 5 days a week, and it was smokier down there than it was actually in the canyon. And turning around and seeing the flames on the hillside, seeing the grocery store parking lot, being the trees being on fire. We quickly turned a corner, and the hillside was on fire. And my son's friend was on the street. His house had just burned down. I mean, we could see it. You're turning around and looking, and you're just exclaiming, "Oh my God, oh my God." Um, because even the beach didn't feel safe. It was it was a visual I'll never forget.
Did you see any emergency services? Did you have any support? Did you have any warnings?
Um, you know, my husband and I were insanely decided to take a walk up our hill. We just don't. I exercise, at a gym or at the beach, but I said, let's go for a walk. And we went up the hill, and we saw that first smoke at like 10:45. So we got, and this may seem utterly terrifying to the rest of the world, and but it was like, oh, a fire. Um, I'm sorry. So we saw it when it first started happening. We saw it before the firefighters got there. And unfortunately, when we went up to see exactly where it was, we no longer had cell service. So we didn't know. I didn't know my phone was blowing up. And I didn't know that the fire I was watching was actually going down into like, we were actually okay. It was heading in an opposite direction. Um, Once we started walking, we actually started running home because our phone got, um, so we got an evacuation order, but then we weren't allowed to leave. There were police saying like it wasn't safe. We actually were told by a firefighter initially that you're better off at home. The canyon's on fire, which probably was true. Even though our phones were saying we were supposed to go. So there was a bit of confusion, but honestly, I think it's because it was moving so fast. The winds were going, and we did get a police escort. I felt safe that second time through the canyon because the police had organized and were taking us in groups of maybe 20 or 30 cars. And we got escorted all the way out onto PCH, maybe 4 miles. So we got help at that point.
You mentioned that you left in a convoy, let's say, with your nearest neighbours. How are they doing? What are you all guys saying to each other on WhatsApp, on messaging services? Kind of, how are they processing what's happened?
You know, our townhouse, our row is that our little HOA complex was standing last night as of 5 o'clock. The HOA above us is on fire. The HOA across from us is on fire. But when we went to bed last night, our places are still there. And so we were messaging each other last night, like, I mean, it's hard. You want to hope because it's better than it's better. Um, but yeah, that's all we have. As soon as I get off with you, I'm going to send the first message of the morning to see if anybody else is up. And what do you know? That's that's it. That's all we have.
Patricia, I hate to ask the question, but what do you do if you find out that your home didn't survive?
I think you have to spend a little bit of time giving yourself it last night. I actually in the afternoon I thought it had gone down, and I sat in the parking lot and I just cried. I just let myself remember what was in the house. I w- I remodeled this past year. I got married this past year, and I had this whole new start. And sort of mourning what you have, like taking a moment. It's such a horrible hit, but I think that's the first thing that'll happen. And right now I'm pushing off having to go through that process. Um, and telling everyone you don't want to talk because everybody wants to talk to you, your family and your friends, and everyone wants to say it's just stuff. You'll rebuild. It's just stuff. And, it's really easy for people to say that. And we are very grateful that we are all alive, that my children are alive, that our pets are alive. But, my business is gone. My business was 10 years old in January, and I watched it burn to the ground. So if my house goes, my 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 job, my passion, I have to figure out how to keep going. So yeah, I don't. It will be a really hard next everything if my house is gone.
And you talk about the impact on the business as well, and kind of that word everything. And it strikes me that the challenge is hard enough if it's one person impacted, but your support structure when your neighbours and friends, etc., are in a similar position, supporting each other then is the biggest challenge.
And that phrase "misery loves company," which is such a it's a silly thing to say, but at the same time, like, you're not alone. Like that terror of, well, what will I do? What will I do? Like, you can at least, when we are able to go back to LA, I want to be in a room with my friends so that we can have that together. You know, I think that's you you're not alone, and it makes it harder, and it also there's some solace that, like, we're all going to do this, and we're going to do it. It's it's a beautiful place that has 100-year history. The Palisades, it's not just a place for celebrities. There are amazing, wonderful people. I come from New York. I would have never lived anywhere in LA but Pacific Palisades. It's the most darling bedroom community. It's got everything you could ever want. It's always unfortunate when you have to drive out and go anywhere else. I don't want to leave. I want to go back to serving the families in that community. Um,
You mentioned your business and serving the families. May I ask what was your business there? What were you doing?
I have a Kumon math and reading franchise. They're in Australia also, actually. So I was a former elementary school teacher, and I've had, I think, over 12 or 1,300 students in the Palisades. So half my staff was my student. Um, I've worked with kids for the last 10 years, and I've gotten messages from their mothers, and I'm going to be FaceTiming in the next day or two any of the students that just want to talk. because when you're 7 or 8 years old, you don't have a cell phone, you can't talk to your friends. Um, so I want to go on. They're going to need help. None of them have schools. I'm figuring out with another family right now. I think the Caruso village did not burn down, and there may possibly be a spot in there. Um, I'm hoping to figure out a temporary spot in the next 2 weeks so that kids can come who are still around.
And Patricia, we really appreciate you sharing your time. I appreciate it is far from easy, but just to be sure, you, your family, your pets, your neighbours, everybody is safe and sound.
We are safe. We are safe.
Really appreciate you sharing your time. Appreciate also it is early morning for you. All the very best. We wish you as well as can be. Patricia, thank you.
You're welcome.